Good evening. Welcome to the Trey Olds Radio Show. This is Trey Olds. Thank you for listening to us today. Join us in a minute, and we'll be right back with our special guest. Thank you. Okay.
And I can tell you why if you want to know why, or we can save it for the interview.
Sure, you could tell that story.
Okay.
Okay. So why are you known as Bob K? Why? How?
When I first started out in radio, my first job at a real radio station was morning man at a local radio station in my hometown, Chino, California. And the general manager said, well, you can't use your real name, Bob Klopfenstein. That doesn't work on the radio. So we're going to just shorten it to Bob K. So they threw away all the other letters in my name, and all I had left was K. So it's been Bob K ever since.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good name for radio. It really does, Bob K. It does.
A lot better than Bob Klopfenstein, I think. Don't you?
I guess so.
I used to do, on college radio where I got started, I used to do a show with a guy by the name of Bob Jewett. And we did a show called the Jewett, Klopfenstein, and Things Program. Now, that's a mouthful.
Yeah. So, my first question is, how did you get started in doing radio and voiceover work? You said you started in college radio, right?
Well, I was one of those kids, so I was an only child.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to entertain myself growing up. And so I listened to the radio a lot, and I would take my record player in my bedroom and take Life magazine, and I would pretend like I was a DJ. And I would make up commercials from the ads in the magazine, play records, and imagine that I was on the real radio. Later on in college, I worked at a radio station, KSPC, Mona College, and I got a job there just playing tapes and introducing the tapes. And one night, the tape machine broke, and the tapes started to slow down, and they went, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, this is my chance. So I started playing some records and had a blast. And so next week, mysteriously, the same thing happened, he said. And I started playing records again. And the station finally caught on to what I was doing. And they said, oh, okay, we'll give you your own show. So that's how I got started. And I did college radio for probably, 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then I got my first job as morning man at a local radio station, and did that for several years. And then I had a very good ear for music, and I could listen to 100 records and tell you which one was going to be a hit. And this is back in the late 60s. And so a big station in Los Angeles heard about me, and they heard about my ability to pick hit songs. Mm-hmm. So they hired me as music director for their big radio station in Los Angeles, KFWB, mm-hmm. which was a music station at the time. And I went in and did that. And so I made a switch from talent to being in management in radio because I was honest with myself. And I would suggest everyone should be honest with themselves. After a while, give it your best, try it. And then if you decide, well, you know what, my longevity in this business might not be that great as being a DJ. Because DJs, as we all know, come and go and come and go and come and go all the time. Yeah. So I thought, let's switch into management. And so from there, I went to Boston to WBZ, and I became an assistant production director, and from there to WIND in Chicago, where I became executive producer. And then from there, I went to KOA in Denver and became program director. And my specialty was talk radio, because talk radio was kind of new then, and there weren't many people who knew about talk radio and how to work with those people how to coach them, manage them, and make the radio station sound interesting to people who had previously only been interested in music radio. So I went on from there to a number of great radio stations across the country in management. Finally became general manager of a station in Seattle. And my last station was in Los Angeles, KABC, which at the time was one of the top talk radio stations in the country, where I got to do a lot of fun things there, including consulting on TV shows and major motion pictures. Whenever they were doing a show about talk radio, they wanted it to be accurate. So they wanted the studios to look right. They wanted the people to behave as a real radio person would. Instead of, a lot of times you'll see movies or television shows where they're talking in a microphone and they're talking into the wrong end of it.
Yeah.
And so I was the first 2 years on the TV show Frasier, which was a very big hit.
Oh, yeah.
I was a consultant to that show and worked with the talent, Kelsey Grammer and Perry Gilpin and some of the others, in helping them really make it look like they were really in a radio station. So I got to do some fun stuff when I was with that. I've always done a little bit of voice work on the side. It's not my primary interest because earlier on, at least until the last few years, they were always looking for people with a deep radio voice. Well, I don't have that. My voice is kind of a soft, pleasant, friendly voice. And so if they were looking for that kind of a read, I could do it for them. So I just kind of, after I retired from radio, I opened my own recording studio and sound business. I do sound for bands that perform inside and outside at concerts. And so now I can do recording in my studio. I do recording for other voice talent. I help people record podcasts, and one of my current clients that I just got on with me is Forbes Books podcasts. And so I'll be doing their podcasts for them 5 times a week. So that's in about 20 minutes there is a nutshell of how I got started.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
I can tell you a fun story about my first day on radio.
Sure.
If you like.
Sure.
The station I worked at the commercial radio station, was a little local radio station. And every morning, right in the middle of the music show, they had a show called Ethel and Her Piano. And in the lobby of the radio station was a baby grand piano. And every morning at 9:15, Ethel, I forget her last name, would come traipsing into the studio and sit down, and I'd give her an introduction, and she would play 15 minutes of people's requests on the piano live in the middle of rock and roll. So my rock music ended, and then there's Ethel. So my first day on the job, getting paid as a real radio person, it comes 9:15. I see Ethel, she comes in, she waves at me, sits down at the piano. I can't see the piano from the studio. So I finished my last song, and I start to read, now, ladies and gentlemen, Pomona First Federal Savings and Loan presents Ethel and Her Piano. 15 minutes of your favorite songs and your favorite requests played by Ethel on the Steinway piano. Take it away, Ethel. Well, guess what? Silence.
Oh, no.
So then I go, well, I'll read it again. Maybe Ethel didn't hear it. She was coming back from the bathroom or something like that. So I read it again, and once again, silence. Well, guess what? Ethel passed away on me on my first day getting paid as a radio person.
Oh, no.
So you'd think that would be an omen to me that maybe I should get out of the business, huh?
Get out while you still can.
Yeah, I didn't. I stuck with it. I'm glad I did. I've been very fortunate. I'm grateful to the things that have happened to me and the people that I've met, people that have helped me, and the people I've been able to try to help and mentor a little bit along the way.
Yeah. I love radio. I've been doing my show for 6 years, and
Great.
and I've done some voice acting stuff, but like you, radio was my first love. I love doing radio because you could do so many things with radio.
Have you ever heard of Stan Freberg?
Yes.
Stan Freberg, I used to go to career days at colleges and talk to them about radio and getting into the business. And Stan Freberg, I would always take a tape along with me and play it. He had this thing called Do You Remember Radio? And it was a thing where he says, now, you can do a lot with television, but there are some things you can't do on television. Now, today, actually, with computer graphics and everything else, you can do these things. But he said, all right, I'm going to give you an example here. He says, imagine that Lake Michigan, we drain it and fill it with hot chocolate. And then we have 250,000 cheering extras along Lake Michigan, along Lakeshore Drive. And then imagine a B-52 comes flying overhead with a giant maraschino cherry, and it drops it into Lake Michigan. All right, now listen to this. And so he says, all right, ready with draining the Lake Michigan. And, he goes through the whole thing. And obviously you can imagine in your mind what this would look like, even though they were just able to create it with a few sounds and a few words. And that, to me, has also been one of the magics of radio. For all you know, I'm sitting on the back of a pony right now and going for a ride talking on my cell phone. You don't know. I could tell you something and create a picture in your mind of where I am and what I'm doing that would connect with your own imagination. And that's a beautiful thing. Radio is about using your imagination. You don't really use your imagination too much with television. Not that there's anything wrong with television, but with radio, and one of the things I started doing on my radio stations when I was programming them back in the 80s and 90s, is I would get the old-time radio shows, Jack Benny, Fibber McGee and Molly, the Westerns, and I would play those, hire somebody to introduce them and run them at night, and you'd be surprised at the response we got from young people who just couldn't believe and were fascinated by it and would listen every night. And before they were going to bed, they would close their eyes and picture everything that was going on. And it was just, it was fabulous. I mean, sometimes I think maybe I was born 30 years too late. I should have been around in the earlier days of radio. But the radio, to me, I never had any interest in moving to television. It's always been radio for me.
Yeah. Now, I've done some, I'm an actor. I do some stage stuff, theater. But radio, it always comes back to radio. I love doing radio because that's where I first started out in, and I don't think you can shake radio off me because that's where I started out. And
yeah. Well, like I say, you could be sitting there in your bathrobe in your slippers and, no one would know that. You could say, well, here we are at the big formal ball tonight, and I'm ready to go dance with my favorite sweetheart. Well, the listener in their minds imagining you as being there in a tuxedo and, if you have the sound effects of a band playing, an orchestra playing, then you've got that. And they can picture that, the way they want to picture it. With television or motion pictures, you tell them how the director and the cinematographer wants it, rather than leaving it up to the mind of the person who's receiving the entertainment. And many times in your own mind, you can paint a much brighter, interesting picture than they could on television or in a movie.
Yeah. My next question is, what is the most challenging part or the most difficult part being in radio and voice management?
Well, the most difficult part is breaking into it. It's getting that first job and then building some credibility. And part of the key is not giving up. I mean, that first little radio station where I saw Ethel go to the great beyond, while I was working there, not only was I the morning DJ, but you know, we'd take turns at, you know, cleaning the restrooms and, you know,